Welcome, dear listener. Make yourself comfortable, though I suspect such comforts will soon fray. The shadows around you, a carefully crafted prelude to the dread ahead. Our coven of the brave grows nightly. We're thrilled you've joined us in the whispering dark. Story 1. The fog clung to Blackwater like a second skin. Clara Bishop felt it slide against her cheeks as she stepped off the Greyhound, damp and unnervingly warm despite the November chill. The bus depot sign buzzed overhead, one of its neon letters flickering a spastic red pulse across the wet asphalt. Lost items. The sign read, where the B had burned out, in Blackwater bus depot. She wondered how long they'd left it that way. Miss Bishop. The voice came from a shadow leaning against a pickup truck, crusted with salt and rust. Sheriff Hollies stepped into the sickly yellow light of the parking lot lamp, his badge gleaming dully against a paunch, straining his uniform buttons. Clara recognized the look in his eyes, the same mix of pity and irritation she'd seen on every cop's face since Ethan disappeared. Still insisting on staying at the house, Hollies asked, hefting her duffel bag into the truck bed. The metal groaned like something alive. Where else would I look? Clara climbed into the cab. The vinyl seat crackled under her thighs, releasing a smell of mildew and old cigarettes. Hollies grunted, slamming his door. Place has been empty 12 years. Not since. He trailed off as the engine coughed to life. Not since the first time he vanished. Clara finished silently. The memory surfaced like a corpse in deep water, 9 years old. Standing in this same truck bed, while search parties combed the woods, Ethan S. red jacket, bright against the snow, their mother S. screams echoing through frozen pines. Then the impossible morning 3 days later, when he reappeared in his bed, damp leaves in his hair, and no memory of where he'd been until now, until the email with its cryptic subject line. I remember where you left me. Attached, a photo of Ethan S. childhood teddy bear, sitting on the rotting porch swing of their abandoned family home. The timestamp showed 3:17 a.m., 2 hours after his apartment security. Cameras caught him sleepwalking into the night, barefoot and blank-eyed. The truck tires crunched over something brittle as they turned onto Hemlock Avenue. Clara stared at the boarded-up storefront's Weaver S. drugstore with its shattered Coca-Cola sign. The movie theater marquee still announcing Jaws in rusted letters. Every window dark, every curtain twitching as they passed. Tourist season S. slow these days, Hollies muttered. His knuckles whitened on the steering wheel. Clara pressed her palm against the cold glass as their childhood home materialized from the fog. The Victorian leaned like a drunkard, its wraparound porch sagging under a quilt of dead ivy. Mom S. hydrangea bushes had grown into skeletal thickets, clawing at the peeling clapboard. But it was the second-story window that froze her breath, their old bedroom window, a pale smudge pressed against the glass. A face. Sheriff. The truck lurched to a stop. Hollis followed her gaze to the empty window. Raccoons, he said too quickly. Squatters, maybe. Place should have been condemned years ago. He didn't offer to go inside. Clara waited until his taillights dissolved into the fog before climbing the porch steps. The wood groaned underfoot, each creak echoing through the hollow belly of the house. She paused at the front door, her hand hovering over the knob. A smell seeped through the cracks, wet earth and spoiled meat. The same stench from Ethan S. bedroom after his first disappearance. The door swung inward before she touched it. Cold air brushed her face, not the crisp chill of autumn, but the dense, gelid cold of deep places, caves, graves, the spaces under beds. Clara flicked on her flashlight. The beam sliced through dust motes, swirling like agitated insects. Ethan. Her voice died in the thick air. The foyer walls were papered in mildew, and the faded roses Mom had chosen, because they never go out of style. Something glinted on the staircase. Clara climbed toward it, each step releasing a muffled creak that didn't quite match the pressure of her foot. At the top of the stairs, her light caught the object, a small silver key hanging from a red ribbon. Ethan S. birthday present when he turned 7, for when you need to remember, Dad had said with a wink. They never found out what it unlocked. The ribbon brushed her wrist as she took it, cold as a dead man S. finger. A floorboard sighed behind her. Clara spun, light sweeping across the landing. Shadows pooled thickly in the corners, seeming to contract from the beam. Her breath fogged in the air. The cold bit deeper now, needling through her jacket. She took a step toward their old bedroom. The door stood ajar. Through the crack, she could see moonlight filtering through grimy windows. The same moon that had watched through that glass 12 years ago, when she pretended to be asleep as Ethan climbed out beneath the covers, when she heard the soft snick of the window latch, when she buried her face in her pillow, so she wouldn't have to explain why she didn't stop him. Her flashlight beam trembled as she pushed the door open. The room looked frozen in time, twin beds with peeling dinosaur spreads. A model solar system dangling from the ceiling. A chalkboard still smeared with Ethan S. crooked 2 + 2 = 4, but the dust lay undisturbed, except for a single path leading to the closet. Clara followed the trail, her pulse throbbing in her temples. The closet door hung crooked on its hinges. Inside, winter coats slumped like headless bodies. Her light caught something wedged behind Dad's old parka, a shoebox tied with yarn. The stench of rot intensified as she lifted the lid. Inside lay a nest of photographs, their edges curled and blackened. The top image stopped her breath a birthday party, her 6th birthday. Mom and Dad grinning with 2 wide mouths. Ethan crouched in the corner, face smeared with chocolate cake, and behind them, barely visible in the shadow of the hallway, a tall figure leaning over the cake, its face a blur of motion, its hands too long. Another photo. A family picnic by Blackwater Gorge. The same blurred figure standing waist-deep in the creek. Head cocked at an unnatural angle. Another. Christmas morning. The thing crouched behind the tree. One spindly arm reaching toward Ethan S. Unwrapped sled. Clara S. hands shook. She didn't he remember any of these. Didn't he remember the figure? But now that she saw it, a memory stirred the constant prickle between her shoulder blades during childhood games. The way shadows sometimes pulsed when she turned her back. The last photo sealed her throat shut. Ethan, age 8, asleep in bed, the thing perched on his chest. Its elongated fingers splayed across his face. Its head turned toward the camera, toward her, because she'd taken this photo. She remembered now the cold weight of Dad's Polaroid in her hands, the flash popping, Ethan jerking awake, screaming about a nightmare, Mom dismissing it as sleep paralysis. But here it was. Here he was. The thing in the photograph tilted its head, blinked. Clara dropped the box. Photos fluttered to the floor like dead leaves. Behind her, the closet door slammed shut. She whirled, fumbling with the knob. It wouldn't he turn. The stench of decay flooded her nostrils, thick enough to taste. Cold breath stirred the hair at her nape. You let them take me. Ethan S. voice, but warped, layered with something wet and buzzing. Clara pressed her back against the door. Her flashlight beam sliced across the room, illuminating the figure standing between the beds. It wore Ethan S. face, like ill-fitting skin, his features stretched over a skull too elongated, eyes swallowed by pits of shadow. Its fingers brushed the floorboards, joints bending in impossible places. The thing smiled, revealing teeth like shards of broken mirror. You watched. Its voice slithered from the walls, the floor, the space behind her eyes. You wanted me gone. No liar. The thing flowed closer. Its movements jerk-stop, like a film strip skipping frames. Every time I cried, every time Mom held me, you wished me away. Clara S. heel hit the baseboard. Nowhere to run. The flashlight flickered. They taste wishes, Clara. The Ethan thing crouched, its head lolling sideways. The hungry ones, they followed you, fed on your little jealousies, your secret hates. A giggle bubbled from its throat, the sound of ice cracking over dark water, and when you wished hard enough, the flashlight died. In the darkness, something cold and many-jointed closed around her wrist. They took me. Clara screamed. The lights flared back on. She was alone. But the photos were different now. In every picture, the blurred figure stood clear, a gaunt silhouette, with a mouth full of lightless teeth, and in every image, 6-year-old Clara stared directly at it, smiling. Footsteps echoed from the hall, slow, deliberate, squelching softly like feet moving through mud. Clara ran. The house stretched around her, corridors warping into impossible lengths. The front door receded into the distance. Moonlit wood melting into rotted plank. She stumbled into the kitchen, where the smell of decay curdled into something sweet and metallic. The basement door stood open. A low moan vibrated through the floorboards. Clara approached the stairs, each wooden step groaning under her weight. The air grew thicker, damper. Her phone S flashlight revealed walls streaked with black mold. The concrete floor below glistening wetly, and hanging from the ceiling, Clara choked back a sob. Dozens of red ribbons dangled from the rafters, each tied to a small silver key. They swayed in an unfelt breeze, tinkling like wind chimes. Beneath them, the floor pulsed, not concrete, flesh, pale and veined, rising and falling with labored breath. A wet click echoed from the shadows. Clara backed up the stairs. The basement door slammed shut. She pounded on it, screaming until her throat rawed. Something brushed her ankle. She looked down. A tendril of darkness curled around her leg. Viscous and hot, more crept from under the stairs, squirming across the floor like sentient oil. They pulsed with a faint, inner light faces swirling in the blackness. Mom, Dad, Ethan, her own face, twisted in rage. You let them take him. The tendrils whispered with 100 familiar voices. You opened the door. The lights failed again. When they flickered back on, Clara stood in her childhood bedroom. Moonlight bled through the window, casting the room in monochrome. The thing wearing Ethan S. skin sat cross-legged on his bed, picking at a loose thread in the quilt. They recoming, it said conversationally. The hungry ones. You called them back when you wished me dead. I never liar. The thing S head snapped up, neck bones cracking. You've been calling them every day. Every time you resented your husband for breathing too loud. Every time you cursed that crying baby on the plane. Every bitter, hungry thought a crash from downstairs. Glad glass shattering. The Ethan thing smiled. They rehear. Clara fled to the hallway. The staircase yawned below. Its steps, now impossibly steep. Shapes moved in the foyer tall. Spindled shadows with too many joints. Their heads turned upward in unison. Light bled from their gaping mouths. The bedroom door slammed. Clara turned to see the thing inches from her face. Its breath smelling of opened graves. "Run," it whispered. She tumbled down the stairs. Knees cracking against hardwood. The shadows converged. Their elongated fingers brushing her hair. Clara burst onto the porch into freezing rain. Blackwater's single street lamp flickered across the figure standing in the yard. Sheriff Hollies aimed his shotgun. "Stay right there, Miss Bishop." They re-inside. Clara stumbled toward him. "We have to the blast," took off her left ear. Clara fell. Warm blood sheeting down her neck. Hollies pumped the shotgun. His face a rictus of terror. "Should we stayed gone," he spat. "Should we let sleeping dogs lie?" The porch groaned. Hollies looked past her, eyes widening. His scream cut off with a wet crunch. Clara rolled over in time to see the shadows pour over him like liquid night. His boots kicked once, then stilled. Something warm and metallic spattered her cheek. Clara ran. The forest swallowed her, bare branches clawing at her clothes. Behind, the shadows slithered through trees, their hungry moans vibrating in her bones. Rain blurred the world into a smear of grays. She fell into a creek bed, icy water soaking through her jeans. The baying ceased. Clara huddled under a rotted log, clutching her bleeding ear. Minutes passed. Hours. A twig snapped. Clara. Ethan stood on the bank, dry despite the downpour. His eyes reflected moonlight like a cat-s. "The LL keep coming," he said, "unless you feed them something better." She stared at his hands. The fingers kept elongating, retracting. "What are you?" "What you made me." He crouched, head tilting. "The hungry ones take what you hate, but they leave. Echoes. Copies. Like letters burned into ash. The rain tasted of blood." Clara spat. "How do I stop them?" Ethan smiled. When the town found her at dawn, Clara was sitting on the church steps. Holly's shotgun lay across her lap. Her remaining ear was pressed to the payphone receiver. Dial tone buzzing like a trapped fly. Another one, muttered Doc Peterson as he loaded her into the ambulance. Through the smeared window, Clara watched the trees. Shadows pooled in their branches, darker than the storm clouds. Waiting, she touched the Polaroid in her pocket, the last photo from the box. 6-year-old Clara, holding hands with the hungry one, smiling. In the ambulance, rearview mirror, her reflection winked. The phone call came through at 3:17 a.m. a young couple in Portland reported their baby monitor picking up strange whispers. A blurred figure standing in the nursery, and on the nightstand, a silver key tied with a red ribbon. Clara smiled in her padded cell. The shadows under her bed stirred. Story 2. The ice sang. Dr. Mara Voss heard it first through 3 layers of thermal insulation. The sound slipping between the cracks in her radiation-proof headphones. A low, thrumming vibration that made her molars ache. She paused mid-core extraction. The diamond-tipped drill whining as it idled in her trembling hands. Across the lab tent, Illy looked up from his spectral analyzer. Eyebrows raised behind fogged goggles. You hear that? Mara shouted over the drill dying scream. The vibration deepened. Snow sifted from the tent ceiling beams. Outside, the endless Antarctic night pressed against the reinforced fabric. A blackness so complete it felt alive. They'd been drilling through Lake Orpheus' 2-mile-thick ice sheet for 17 days, chasing the anomalous heat signatures NASA's satellites had painted across this nameless stretch of Queen Maud Land, now at 1:47 am, on what their circadian apps insisted was a Tuesday. The ice sheet was answering. Illy peeled off his headphones like a submarine sonar. His breath crystallized midair, or a heartbeat. They found it 3 hours later, when the thermal probe broke through to the subterranean lake. The camera feed showed not Blackwater, but a forest of jagged crystalline structures rising from the ice ceiling like inverted stalactites, and beneath them, that not possible, whispered Anya, their microbiologist. Her gloved finger hovered over the monitor. The structure spanned the entire screen, smooth obsidian planes intersecting at angles that bypassed Mara's optic nerves and went straight to her nausea centers. Its surface rippled faintly, as if breathing. Radiation readings spiked. The drill team's laughter, when they first reviewed the satellite data, echoed in Mara's skull, ancient aliens. Lovecraft's wet dream, now curdling into something sharp and cold behind her sternum. 600 meters down, Illy said, voice tight. Perfect geometric form. No known volcanic or glacial processes could Mara touch the screen. The structure pulsed. Thewum. They descended. The borehole elevator creaked through eons of compacted ice. Headlamps carving cones of blue-tinged visibility. Mara's parka hood brushed the ceiling, releasing a shower of ice fragments that glittered like crushed stars. Paul, their grad student, kept humming Radiohead's Subterranean Homesick Alien until Anya told him to shut up. No one laughed. The air changed first warmer, carrying a metallic tang that coated tongues. Then the light. By the time the elevator settled on the cavern floor, the headlamps had become redundant. The structure glowed, not from any external source, but from within its impossible angles. A sickly bioluminescent shimmer, like oil on water. It stood 3 stories tall, its base fused with the cavern's ice wall. Mara approached slowly, her shadow stretching and warping across curved surfaces that shouldn't have been able to support their own weight. "Look," Paul breathed. Carved into the structure base no. Grown into it. The lines, smooth and organic, were symbols. Triangles bisected by spirals. Concentric circles, bleeding fractal branches. A language of geometry that danced away from comprehension. Mara's eyes watered. "It's a map," Anya said, gloved hand hovering over a cluster of intersecting lines. Or a message. Coordinates. Ellie's radiation counter clicked furiously. Whatever it is, it's hot. 120 millisieverts and climbing. Paul pulled out his phone. "Getting video for Doctor. Show back at McMurdo. Holy shit." The screen showed a scrambled mess of static when he aimed it at the structure. Black tendrils writhed across the display. Mara's own smartwatch beeped a calendar alert for her father's birthday. He died on an icebreaker in the Bering Strait when she was 12. The date read October 17, 2023. Today was March 6. "Time's different here," she whispered. They found the bodies in a side chamber. 6 mummified figures in Soviet-era cold weather gear, perfectly preserved by the dry air. Frozen blood crusted their nostrils and eye sockets. One still clutched a Kodak film camera, its casing split open like a rotten fruit. The oldest corpse sat cross-legged against the chamber wall, a leather journal open in its lap. 11 May 1965. The Americans think they won the race to the moon. Fools. The real frontier is here, in this screaming dark. The angles keep changing. Petrov cut his own eyes out this morning. Says he needs to see properly. Mara turned the page. A pressed flower fell out a poppy, blood-red petals preserved under laminate. Her mother had kept poppies in their Alaskan greenhouse. For the pain, she said during those final morphine drip days. Guys, Illy stood at the chamber entrance, face lit from below by his tablet. I ran the structure's geometry through Fractal Soft. The pattern isn't random. It's a prime number sequence. Anya peered over his shoulder. Primes up to 13, 17, 19. Wait. Those aren't they reprimes in base 12. But look at the clustering. Ellie's finger traced glowing dots. It matches the radio signals the Soviets picked up in the 60s. The WOW signal. Lorimer bursts. All the big mysteries. Paul laughed a shrill, broken sound. So what? Some ancient alien radio tower. Not a tower. Mara S. mouth moved independently of her mind. Words spilling like meltwater. A beacon. And we just turned it on. The ice screamed. It started as a subsonic vibration that liquefied their balance. Mara staggered against the chamber wall as centuries-old ice cracks spiderwebbed across the ceiling. Paul vomited down his parka front. Anya clutched her head, screaming about the light between stars. Only Illy kept moving. Tablet gripped like a prayer book as he scrambled back toward the elevator. The sequence. He shouted. It's counting down. Mara saw it in the fractured edges of her vision. The structure, S symbols, rearranging. Prime numbers collapsing into a single pulsating spiral. The Soviet journal, S last entry burned behind her eyes. They coming through the cracks in the sky. Only didn't he make it? They found him halfway up the borehole. Parka shredded from the inside out. His frozen blood formed perfect Fibonacci spirals on the ice walls. The elevator cables thrummed with that same wrong vibration, now syncopated like laughter. Anya stopped speaking entirely on the surface trek back to base camp. When Mara checked her GPS, the coordinates alternated between 82S54E and strings of Cyrillic characters that dissolved when viewed directly. The stars watched, not the familiar constellations of Mara S. childhood, but new configurations that squirmed against the blackness. The Big Dipper S handle coiled into a question mark. Orion S belt became a blinking triplicate eye. She understood. Now, the structure wasn't a beacon. It was a dam, and they cracked it. Paul shot himself on day 3 of the whiteout. Left a suicide note written entirely in prime numbers. Anya wandered into the storm, whispering about the color behind time. Mara alone reached the supply cache. Frostbitten fingers closing around the emergency satellite phone. The voice at McMurdo Control sounded impossibly young. Dr. Voss. We thought there's been no contact for listen. Mara stared at the aurora writhing overhead, not green, but a putrid yellow that smelled of rotting honey. The structurate, S a containment unit. The symbols, the primes they rebars on a cage. We need to a shadow, moved behind the southern lights. Vast, angular, older than bone. Mara S. remaining eye began to bleed. Oh God, it's already out. The thing in the ice, doesn't he hate you? It doesn't he know you exist? When the rescue team arrived weeks later, they found the base camp intact. Generators humming. Coffee still warm in insulated mugs. Every screen showed the same looping image. Mara S. final ice core sample, magnified 10,000x. The bacteria wherein T terrestrial. Their cellular structure matched the structure S symbols. As for Mara herself, they found her journal in the med tent. Last entry dated 10 years in the future. The final page held a single pressed poppy and 9 words written in frozen blood. ITS in the numbers. ITS in the sky. ITS here. High above Earth. The Van Allen belts shudder. Deep below Vostok Station. Something old and hungry and wrong unfolds itself across dimensions and in 1,000 laboratories worldwide. Mathematicians are noticing something odd about prime numbers. Story 3. The walls breathe when Clara isn't looking. She is certain of it. She moves into her mother S house 3 weeks after the funeral. The key leaving a rust smell on her palms. The inheritance smells of mothballs and mildew. The floral wallpaper peeling like sunburned skin. It'll be good for you, her sister said. Voice tinny through the phone. Write your novel somewhere quiet. But the silence here isn't quieted as a held breath. The rotary phone in the hallway rings at 3:17 a.m. Every night, Clara counts the seconds between shrills on the 4th night. Curled knees pressed against her chest. 17 rings. When she finally lifts the receiver, static exhales against her ear. A wet, clicking sound. Then a whisper. She S in the walls. She tears the phone from its socket. The jack crumbles like dead skin. Mornings are safer. Sunlight bleeds through grimy bay windows. As Clara sorts through her mother S things, the dementia had hollowed the woman years before her heart gave out, leaving behind a museum of nonsensical relics. A shoebox full of teeth, baby pearls, and yellowed molars. Polaroids of empty rooms. A music box that plays a warped rendition of Rock-A-Bye Baby. Clara wins it once. The tinny melody skips on when the bow breaks. She finds the first journal beneath a floorboard in the master bedroom. The pages smell like aspirin and urine. March 14th, 1998. Clara cried again last night. I told the doctor at S normal for a 6-year-old to have nightmares. But he doesn't understand. She keeps pointing at the walls. Says her sister is stuck inside. Clara S. fingers leave sweat smudges on the paper. She never had a sister. The shadows thicken. She stops answering her sister S. calls. It S. the little things at first. Her coffee tastes like soil. The smell of rot follows her from room to room. Sweet and meaty. She finds handprints on the bathroom mirror, small ones. Child-sized, but only below the condensation. Pressed outward from the other side. The music box plays by itself now, always at 3:17 a.m. Clara sleeps with scissors under her pillow. She writes during the day, her manuscript devolving into frantic scribbles. The walls are thin here, thin, thin, thin. You can hear her scratching rock. A bye baby on the treetop. She says it, my fault. The crying starts on a Tuesday. It high-pitched, hungry, vibrating through the heating vents. Clara follows the sound to the linen closet, where a crack splits the back wall, a jagged black line, oozing cold air. She presses her eye to it. A child's eye stares back. She slams the door, spends 6 hours dragging her mother's velvet armchair against it. When she sleeps, she dreams of tiny fingers peeling up floorboards like scabs. The journal entries grow sparse. Desperate. August 22nd, 2001. Dr. Phillips says I am projecting. That Clara's invisible friend is a trauma response. He doesn't hear the giggling. Doesn't see that the entry ends there. The next page holds a single sentence, ink gouged deep. I fixed the walls. Clara finds the bricks in the basement. They restacked neatly behind the furnace, mortar still clinging to their edges. One has a bloody fingerprint smeared across its face. Another sports a strand of hair long, auburn, matching the baby teeth in the shoebox. The wall behind the bricks weeps black mold. Reality phrase. Clara wakes with dirt under her nails. Her manuscript pages multiply overnight, filled with looping scrawl, not her own. Let me out, let me out, let me out. The music box plays constantly now, even after she throws it down the stairs. Its broken gears chant when the bow breaks, when the bow breaks, when the bow. She tears at the hallway wallpaper, beneath the third layer paisley swallowed by roses, swallowed by ivy. She finds the drawings, crude crayon figures. A stick woman, Mommy. A larger stick girl, Clara. A smaller stick girl screaming inside a brick box. Dozens of them, stretching around the room. The paper is mottled with age and something rust brown. The crying grows louder. The phone rings. It's impossible. She ripped the cord out, buried the receiver in the backyard. But there it is, shrilling on the hallway table, pristine as the day she arrived. She answers. Static. Then a voice her own, but younger, scraped raw. You left me here. The walls bulge. Plaster cracks as small hands punch through. Skin gray and glistening with mortar. A child's face emerges. Auburn hair matted with brick dust. Eyes milk blue. Her eyes. You pushed me in, the girl rasps. When Mommy told you to choose. Memories detonate, Mother's hands shaking. A baby wailing in the walls. Hush now, Clara. We have to be quiet, quiet, quiet. Which one? The doctor asked, flashlight probing her pupils. You can only keep one. The bricks, weeping red, Clara screams. The thing wearing her sister S face screams louder. They find her 3 days later. The police report notes the smell first spoiled milk and copper. They document the claw marks on every wall, the bricks stacked beneath the stairs, the manuscript pages plastering the house like makeshift wallpaper. Most concerning, the report states, was the state of the body. Clara Montague, age 34, deceased from dehydration and self-inflicted wounds, fingernails torn off, throat raw from screaming, and clutched in her left hand. A tiny femur bone gnawed clean. The realtor sells the house within the month. The young couple who move and admire the fresh drywall, the newly installed landline. They joke about the previous owner's eccentric taste in decor. All those antique music boxes lining the shelves. At 3:17 a.m., their baby monitor crackles to life. Rock-a-bye baby plays softly through the static. The mother goes to check. The walls, she notices, feel warm. Story 4. The walls breathed. Clara noticed it first on a Tuesday evening. 3 days after moving into her Aunt S' old Victorian on the edge of the cedar swamps. She deep in unpacking boxes of her dead sister S things when the damask wallpaper rippled like a muscle contracting. A wet, organic sound followed the slick smack of a tongue detaching from a roof. And when she pressed her palm flat against the wall, she felt warmth pulsing beneath the peeling floral patterns. Stress, Dr. Varma had said during their last telehealth session. Her pixelated face floating in Clara's laptop like a disembodied spirit. Grief manifests in unexpected ways after traumatic loss. But Clara knew the difference between panic attacks and walls that shuddered, between survivor's guilt and the sour milk stench that seeped from the heating vents every night at precisely 3:17 am. She timed it. The house had been a mistake, a desperate attempt to outrun the hollow-cheeked ghost of her twin sister Emily, who drowned 6 months earlier in Mirror, like the same lake visible through the attic window. Its surface perpetually still as a closed eye. Aunt Marla's lawyer had been clear. The property's been vacant since the incident in '92. Needs work. He hadn't mentioned the way floorboards squealed like stepped-on animals, or how the master bedroom mirror refused to show anything but the foot of the wrought iron bed. No matter where you stood, Clara began documenting the anomalies in a leather-bound journal Emily had gifted her for their 16th birthday. The cover still smelled of her sister's vanilla perfume. Day 4. Found black mold forming words behind the refrigerator. Could be sworn it said stop digging. Day 7. Woke to find all my photos of Emily altered. every picture, her face is turned slightly away. Never noticed before, did she always stand like that. Day 9. The whispering started, not from the walls, but from inside my molars. Voice sounds like Mom during her final days at hospice. You let the wrong one die. Her therapist would V called it dissociation, projection, a fractured psyche, constructing elaborate metaphors for guilt. But when Clara chipped away a section of living room wall and found strands of auburn hair identical to Emily S. woven through the plaster, she stopped mentioning the house during their sessions. The dreams were worse. Every night, she stood knee-deep in Mirror Lake, tepid water. Moonlight painting the pines bone-white. Emily would emerge from the center, her waterlogged sundress clinging to skeletal limbs, hair streaming with leeches. UV always been the forgetful twin. She gurgle, black water cascading from her lipless mouth. But you remember this time, 1TU. Clara would wake, choking on swamp water. That vanished the moment she turned on the lights. Then came the footsteps. They started in the attic, a slow, dragging gait that paused directly above her bed each night when she mustered the courage to investigate. She found nothing but dust and a Child S rocking horse layered under decades of grime. Its glass eyes followed her around the room. It's not the house, Clara whispered to her reflection one bleary dawn, scrubbing at the mud caked under her fingernails. The mirror showed only her torso, as if her head had been erased. You unraveling. You know what happened to Mom. Their mother had dissolved into paranoid dementia at 45. Convinced spiders were knitting her memories into webs. But Mom never found teeth in the garden soil, never discovered her own handwriting scrawled across the ceiling in something sticky and red. The tipping point came on the equinox. Clara awoke to the smell of burning hair. Her journal lay open on the bedside table. Entries were written in jagged capitals. You think ITS you living these days. She been in the walls since the lake we taste your regret like birthday cake outside. The swamp exhaled a thick yellow fog that clung to the windows. The grandfather clock downstairs struck 13 times. When it finished, the house began to peel. Wood paneling curled back like sunburned skin, revealing glistening meat beneath. The staircase banister sprouted cartilage. Clara stumbled into the kitchen, where the refrigerator pulsed like a heart in a butcher S-case. Through its open door, she saw not shelves, but a tunnel lined with photographs, all of Emily, all moving. Her sister at age 8, laughing as she buried something small and squirming in the backyard. Emily at 16, pressing a finger to her lips as she slipped into Clara S. bedroom with scissors. Emily last summer, screaming soundlessly as hands that looked exactly like Clara S. pushed her under the lake, S glassy surface. No, Clara breathed, fingernails carving crescents into her palms. That S not how it happened. I was in the cabin. I slept through it. The floor liquefied beneath her. She plunged into warm, breathing darkness. When she awoke, she was lying on the attic floorboards. The rocking horse loomed over her. Its painted smile now stretched into a rictus grin. From below came the wet crunch of something climbing the stairs. Clara crooned a voice that was hers but deeper, glutted. You didn't really think you could leave me in the dark. Twins share everything. The trapdoor creaked open. What emerged wore her face like ill-fitting lace, its limbs bent backwards at the joints. Fingers fused into bony spades. Behind it, the walls bled a substance that smelled of childhood summer's sunscreen and chlorine, and the copper tang of a split lip. Mom tried warning you, the not Clara sighed, caressing the rocking horse S mane, when she burned down Dad S toolshed, when she gouged out her eyes with salad tongs. The walls between worlds are thin here, always have been. It gestured to the small rectangular window overlooking the lake. The water rippled now, disturbed by pale shapes just beneath the surface. Dozens of them. Hundreds. Emily S. lonely, it said. The thing S. jaw unhinged, revealing a second, smaller mouth where its uvula should be been. But Don T. worry. ULL have eternity to apologize. Clara scrambled backwards until her spine hit something warm and yielding. The attic wall had grown teeth. Outside, the lake began to boil. When the police kicked down the door 3 days later, prompted by concerned neighbors, the stench, they found no trace of Clara Bowen, only the journal, its final entry written in 2 distinct hands, one precise and anxious, the other a frenzied scrawl. They wanted twins. Mom knew the house needs skin to stay standing. Emily, WASNT, the first one TB, the last, we were always hungry. And on the bedroom mirror, facing the lake, where Clara S. empty rowboat drifted, a single word fogged in breath that never quite evaporated almost. Story 5. The static that breathes Clara S. phone buzzed at 3:07 a.m. The sound slicing through the hum of her white noise app. She didn't remember setting an alarm when she reached for the device. Its screen burned blue in the dark, casting jagged shadows across her studio apartment. The notification read, "Look at me." She laughed a dry, nervous sound and thumbed the message away. Another glitch in the algorithm. Another misfired ad. But as she lay back down, the room felt charged, like the air before a lightning strike. Her smart bulb flickered once, faintly, though she turned it off hours ago. The first photograph appeared 3 days later. Clara found it buried in her cloud storage between cat memes and grocery lists. A selfie she'd never taken. The image showed her sleeping face, mouth slightly open, the pillowcase creased under her cheek. The timestamp placed it at 2:58 a.m., 9 minutes before the phantom alarm. Deepfake, she muttered, deleting the file. Her voice shook. That night, her AirPods crackled to life as she scrolled through TikTok. A wet, clicking noise pulsed behind a makeup tutorial, syncopated with the influencer S voice. ULL click need click. Just a click touch of highlighter. Clara yanked the earbuds out. But the sound followed her, leaking from her laptop speakers across the room. The screen flickered. In the split second before the laptop went dark, she saw her own reflection, except the Clara on screen was smiling. Tech support called it a cascading firmware issue. They replaced her router, her phone, her laptop. The representative chuckled when she mentioned the photo. Hackers love, he said, using the Mandarin word for scaring people. Change your passwords. Maybe watch less true crime. Yeah. But the new devices came pre-infected. Her Fitbit began logging midnight walks. She didn't take 2.7 miles every night, traced in perfect ovals around her bed. The sleep tracker showed spikes of adrenaline at 3:07 a.m. Her heart rate flatlining for exactly 9 minutes each time before restarting. When she tried to remove the device, the clasp welded itself shut, its screen flashing no in pixelated red. It's in the cloud, she whispered, staring at her purged iCloud account. Fresh selfies populated the trash folder as she watched. Clara brushing teeth with a stranger S hands. Clara standing in her shower, fully clothed. Clara mouthing words at the camera, her eyes pitch black and dripping. The night had breached physical space. Clara was baking cookies, her smart oven preheated to 666 F, melting chocolate chips into smoking tar. The fire alarm sang a nursery rhyme instead of screaming when she grabbed her phone to call 911. The emergency number redirected to a voicemail. UV reached the operator. Please state the nature of your haunting. A child S giggle. Then her own voice. Let me in properly this time. She fled to the parking garage, car keys jangling, but her Tesla reversed instead of driving forward, pinning her against the concrete wall. The dashboard screen displayed a single eye human, but not hers, its pupil dilating to swallow the camera. Stop, stop, stop. She clawed at the door handle. The car obeyed. When she staggered inside, every device in her apartment was playing the same YouTube video. a 24-hour live stream titled Clara S. Channel. The footage showed her empty studio. Current time in the corner. They found her phone in the East River, still recording. The last video shows Clara pacing her apartment. Hair torn out in clumps. She is speaking to someone off camera. I see you in the screen reflections, in the static between channels. You read the pop-up ad that knows my search history. The autocorrect finishing Maya glitch scrambles the audio. When it clears, she is kneeling, face pressed to her laptop S webcam. You read not code, she whispers. You read the shape that lives between packets, the thing we invited inside when we plugged in the first router. And now you re hungry. The screen flares. For 3 frames long enough to haunt, not long enough to comprehend something leans out of the laptop, ragged and infinite, all fractured light and buzzing edges. Clara S. mouth stretches around a scream that comes out as a Microsoft startup chime. Her landlord discovered the apartment empty, except for the lingering smell of ozone. The police noted the lack of forced entry, the untouched security cameras. Closure came in the form of a single email, sent from Clara S. account to her mother S. iCloud. Attachment: IMG 8000, 573 mauve. The video shows Clara smiling calmly at her kitchen table. Behind her, the appliances hum in perfect harmony. Everything is fine, she says. Her lips move a half-second out of sync. I just needed to unplug for a while. Love you. As the video ends, the camera pulls back through the phone screen, through layers of menus and servers, to reveal Clara still sitting there, mouthing the same words on every device you own, waiting for you to finish watching, waiting to switch places. Story 6. The walls hummed, not the low electrical drone of faulty wiring, but something wetter, deeper, like the sound a throat makes just before vomiting. Mara pressed her palms against the peeling floral wallpaper of her new bedroom, feeling the vibration move through her teeth. 3 days in the old Harkness farmhouse, and she still jumped every time the ancient radiator coughed to life. But this wasn't tea, the radiator, she told herself. It was the wind. The realtor had warned her about the prairie gusts funneling through the valley. Though late October had been still as a held breath until tonight. The moon hung low and jaundiced outside her window, casting long fingers of light across the warped floorboards. Something glistened in the grooves between the boards, not dust, but a thin black film that smelled of burnt hair. When she knelt to inspect it, the hum pulsed her phone charger, sparked when she plugged it in. Mara jerked back as the outlet spat a chunk of something wet and gray onto her bare foot. It looked like chewed gum, but colder, much colder. She scraped it off with a tissue, her hands trembling as the bedroom door creaked open of its own accord. "Wind," she whispered to the empty hallway. Just the wind, but the air sat heavy and stagnant. The grandfather clock in the foyer, a monstrous thing with a cracked glass face, began striking 13. Mara counted each dull thunk as the rusted hammer hit metal instead of bell. On the 13th stroke, the temperature dropped so suddenly her breath fogged. The hum coalesced into words. Mara, not a voice. The absence of one, the auditory shape left behind when something that should have spoken didn't he. She clamped her hands over her ears, nails digging into her scalp as the not voice slithered through her, hungry. She ran the kitchen tiles, leached warmth from her soles. As she fumbled with the back door lock, her reflection in the black window showed someone else standing behind her, a tall silhouette with shoulders too angular, head tilted like a bird examining prey. Mara spun around. Nothing but shadows pooling in the corners. Where the moonlight didn't reach, the lock clicked. Cold air slapped her face as she stumbled onto the porch, nearly tripping over the collection of bone wind chimes left by the previous owners. They clattered like laughing teeth. Mara froze mid-step. The cornfield was gone where acres of withered stalks should have stood between her and the distant county road. There was only a vast black lake. Its surface shone obsidian under the moon, perfectly smooth, perfectly still. No crickets sang, no owls called. The silence had weight here, pressing against her eardrums, until they ached. Something broke the water's surface, a pale hand reaching up in a languid wave. Then another, dozens more, fingers curling in unison, as if conducting an unseen orchestra. Mara's knees gave out. The hands began to clap the sound, wasn't applause. It was the wet smack of meat on stone, of bodies hitting pavement, rhythmless, relentless. The lake rippled with each impact, the water turning thick and red as it sloshed against the shore. Mara scrambled backward, her palms slipping on something warm and stringy. The porch steps were bleeding. She woke, screaming into her pillow, drenched in sweat that smelled faintly of copper. Morning light streamed through the window, revealing ordinary floorboards caked with normal dust. No black ooze, no lake. But when she checked her phone, the screen showed 13 missed calls from her own number. The hum lingered in her molars as she drove into town. At Sullivan's Hardware, the clerk refused to make eye contact while ringing up her air fresheners and extra lamps. Old Harkness Place, right. He wiped his nose with a grease-stained sleeve. My pop helped build that farmhouse back in '58. had to pour the foundation. Twice Mara's credit card hovered over the reader. Why first crew kept complaining about the dirt tasting sweet. His chuckle died when she didn't he join in. Ah, you know how old-timers yarn. Probably just, you know. He tapped the side of his head. The road home felt longer. As her tires crunched over the gravel driveway, Mara noticed the cornfield stood exactly where it always had brittle stalks swaying in the afternoon breeze. But the air carried a new scent beneath the earthy decay. Birthday candles, extinguished by wet fingers. Mr. Voyle was waiting on her porch. The neighbor's overalls hung loose on his gaunt frame, straw hat shadowing eyes that never quite settled on hers. "Saw your lights on late," he said, by way of greeting. His left hand kept creeping toward the bone chimes before he snatched it back. Like a child avoiding a hot stove, Mara shifted her hardware store bag. "Trouble sleeping, MM." He nodded at the field. "They sing to you yet?" The question hung between them, absurd and terrifying. Before she could answer, Voyle lunged forward, yellowed nails digging into her wrist. His breath smelled of rancid milk. "Don't listen when the angel gets hungry. Bury your silver. Salt the doors. And for Christ's sake, stop screaming in your sleep. You LL whet its appetite." He vanished into the goldenrod before she could scream. Nightfall brought the hum back, stronger now. It vibrated in her fillings as Mara salted every threshold, placed mirrors facing every window, and slept with her grandmother's silver locket clutched to her chest. The dream came anyway. She stood in the foyer, watching her own body descend the staircase. This other Mara moved, wrong joints popping, head lolling, her mouth unhinging like a snake to lick the grandfather clock's face. The hands spun backward, each revolution peeling years from real Mara's skin, until she felt her childhood memories slipping away. Her first bike, her mother's laugh, the name of the boy who'd given her that locket. Take the meat and leave the bones. The knot Mara crooned, its voice the buzz of flies against glass. That's how you last woke with a bloody mouth. The locket lay open on her nightstand, its tiny photo of her sister replaced by a curled black feather. That's when she remembered. She never had a sister. The realization unstitched something. Memories unraveled whole childhood scenes, dissolving into gray static. Mara clawed at her own arms, trying to anchor herself in the pain. But the marks faded as soon as they appeared. Downstairs, the grandfather clock chimed 13, 30, 60. She found Voile's journal buried beneath a loose floorboard in the pantry. His shaky handwriting detailed 50 years of careful bargains. Leave a chicken in the northwest field every new moon. Speak only in whispers after dark. Never acknowledge the angel's true face. The final entry froze her blood. It learned our names. The rules don't stick anymore. Ellen tried to run last night. The lake gave her back in pieces. Mara raced to the window. The cornfield was gone again, replaced by that endless black lake. Hands slapped the surface in that same arrhythmic mockery of applause. This time they held faces, dozens of familiar, beloved faces, her college roommate, her father, the barista who remembered her coffee order every morning, stretched like putty over grasping fingers. Their mouths moved in unison. You fed us to it. The hum became a roar. Plaster rained down as the walls bulged inward. The house frame creaking like overloaded ice. Mara fell to her knees as the truth detonated in her mind. The reason the mortgage was so cheap. The way the realtor's eyes had skipped over the west bedroom. The sweet rot under every breath of this cursed land. They'd all known. They'd all fed the angel it peeled itself from the hallway. Shadows a towering mass of matted feathers and fused human limbs. Its face a swirling void that drank the light. The angel's true voice was the sound of roots cracking skulls open for tender marrow. You kept souvenirs. It spoke into her dissolving mind. My memories in your locket. Your sister's face in the mirror. Let me return the favor. When the sheriff came weeks later, summoned by concerned neighbors, he found the farmhouse spotless. No salt lines. No feathers. Just a collection of bone chimes, singing sweetly in the breeze. The new realtor assured her client the place was a steal previous owner had left in a hurry. But all traces of trouble had been scrubbed away. As the young couple toured the bedroom, the wife paused. Does the air taste sweet to you outside? The corn sighed and swayed. Under the soil, something ancient and hungry stirred. Its new bones settling into the comfortable shape of a woman who always lived there, who never lived there, who smiled with Mara's mouth as the first tendrils of dusk crept across the fields, carrying the faint, wet sound of something humming. Story 7. The keeper's curse. The first thing Mara noticed was the smell rusted iron and brine. Like the lighthouse had been bleeding into the sea, she stepped off the rickety supply boat onto the jagged rocks of Cairn Point. Her boots slipping on kelp-slick stone. Captain Greeley, didn't he help her unload the crates of canned goods and kerosene? Didn't he even meet her eyes when he muttered, 4 weeks till I am back. You sure you re-up for it? Didn't he answer? The question hung between them, swallowed by the throaty groan of the lighthouse door swinging open in the wind. By day the routine was simple. Trim the wick, polish the lens, log the weather. The previous keeper, a taciturn man named Hollies, had left the ledger open to a half-finished entry. November 3rd. The light S gone dim again. They dawn tea like it, when the sentence trailed into an ink blot the shape of a handprint. Mara tore out the page, fed it to the stove. But nights were different. The tower S-beam carved through the coastal fog like a scalpel, its rhythm as precise as a heartbeat. 6 seconds on, 6 off. Mara would sit in the lantern room, her back pressed to the curved wall, counting each rotation. That S when the whispers started not in her ears, but in her teeth, a vibration that made her molars ache. She told herself it was the wind threading through the cracks in the iron balcony. Told herself the shadows pooling at the edges of the lens were just tricks of the dark. Until the night she heard the singing. It came from below, where the waves chewed at the foundation. A watery hum. No melody she recognized. Mara gripped the railing, leaned over the balcony. The beam swept across the rocks, illuminating a figure standing waist deep in the surf. Pale hair clung to its skull like seaweed, its face tilted upward, features smudged as wet clay. Then the light pivoted, and it was gone. She found the first photograph 3 days later, tucked inside a moldering copy of Moby Dick. Black and white, edges curled. A woman in a 1920s bathing suit posed on the lighthouse stairs, smiling too wide. Behind her, the window reflected a shape, something crouched on the ceiling, all elbows and knees. Mara S. fingers left damp streaks on the image. The woman S. eyes followed her as she slid the photo into the stove. The whispers grew louder. They lived in the spiral staircase now. A chorus of sighs rising from the stone steps. Mara took to sleeping in the lantern room, wrapped in a moth-eaten blanket. She rationed the kerosene, but the light kept dimming. She de-waked to find the flame guttering. The tower S-beam reduced to a sickly yellow smudge, and always the sense of something waiting just beyond the glass, breathing in time with the fog. The storm hit on the 18th night. Waves exploded against the cliffs, shaking the tower to its bones. Mara clung to the ladder as salt spray lashed through the open hatch. Below, the sea roared like a living thing. Above, the lens flickered once, twice then died. Darkness, real darkness, the kind that presses into your nostrils, your throat. Mara fumbled for the matches, her hands trembling. The first 2 snapped. The third flared, revealing the thing standing behind her. It wore Holly's S face, or almost. The eyes were too large, pupils swallowing the irises. The mouth stretched sideways, splitting at the corners. "You let it go out," it said, voice bubbling like waterlogged wood. She dropped the match. When she lit the lamp again, she was alone. But the storm had washed the rocks clean. No crabs, no driftwood, just a single child shoe, left perfectly centered on the doorstep. The cellar door, Wasson T on the blueprints. Mara found it by accident. Her hip brushing against a loose stone in the pantry wall. The hinges screamed as it swung inward, revealing a narrow staircase. The air below smelled of iodine and spoiled meat. Holly's journal waited on the bottom step, page after page of cramped handwriting, sentences devolving into spirals. They come with the dim light, he'd written. Hungry things, older than the rocks. The first keeper made a bargain feed them, and they keep the channel safe. But the light their leash. Let it die, and the rest was scratched out. At the back of the journal, a list of names. Clara Winslow, 1923. Thomas Higgs, 1937. Eleanor Parrish, 1951. All keepers, all vanished. The last entry made Mara blood freeze. Mara Voss, 2023, her own name, in her own handwriting. The light 1T stay lit now. She pours kerosene until it overflows. But the flame shrinks, cowering. The whispers are screams. The shadows have texture fingernails, teeth. From the window, she sees them climbing the cliffs. Dozens, hundreds. Their bodies glisten in the moonlight, joints bending the wrong way. Captain Greeley, boat, arrives at dawn. A man stands on the rocks, waving. His face is a cousin to hers. His voice, a perfect mimic. Got your message. He calls. Said you cracked. Wanted relief early. Mara pounds the glass. No, I didn't tea. But the man who isn't tea Greeley grins. Teeth sharp as splintered bone. The things below mimic his expression. Their mouths unhinging. The tower shudders. The light gutters. And Mara understands. The ledger lies open. Her hands moving without consent. They don't like it when you try to leave, she writes. The ink bubbles, black as crude oil. Somewhere below, a new door creaks open. The next keeper arrives at noon. Story 8. The walls began whispering 3 days. After Clara moved into her grandmother estate, not the hissing of pipes or the groan of old timber settling, these were words. Viscous and deliberate, pooling in her ears like syrup. You shouldn't have come back. They murmured as she scrubbed decades of dust from the parlor lead light windows. The voice matched the one in her recurring childhood nightmare. The one where something cold and many-legged scuttled beneath her bedsheets. She told herself it was the isolation. Ravenswood House, crouched at the end of a mile-long driveway, its gables clawing at the Missouri sky. The nearest town had withered to a gas station. and a boarded-up post office since Grandma Imogen S. funeral. Clara S., editor, called the inheritance a creative retreat. But the advance for her second novel had barely covered the moving van, now surrounded by peeling wallpaper the color of jaundiced skin. She wondered if the silence itself had teeth. The first photograph appeared on her desk Tuesday morning, a Polaroid. Edges curled with age. It showed a girl of about 7 in a yellow sundress, standing on Ravenswood S. wraparound porch. Clara S. chest tightened. The child S. face was hers, down to the chip in her left front tooth from a playground fall. But Clara had never owned a yellow dress. Her grandmother hadn't allowed bright colors, stress hallucinations. She told the empty house, tossing the photo into the fireplace. The flames turned cobalt blue as it burned. By Thursday, the smells started. Rotting lilies in rooms where no flowers sat. Cigarette smoke coiling from empty ashtrays. Clara would wake gasping at 3:07 each morning, convinced someone had been pressing a pillow over her face, only to find her sheets damp with sweat, not water, though the distinct scent of lake algae clung to her skin. She began keeping a knife under her pillow, the bone-handled one from Grandma Imogen S. desk. The man in the gray suit appeared on Sunday. Clara was inventorying the library S. crumbling first editions when she felt the temperature drop. Her breath plumed in the sudden cold. There, between Dickens and Doyle, stood a figure in an old-fashioned three-piece, suit the color of tomb dust. His face blurred when she tried to focus, as if her eyes refused to parse the features. "Miss Turner," he said, and the voice was wrong wet and clicking, like words forced through a throat full of moths. "You've been neglecting your obligations." She stumbled backward, sending a stack of books crashing to the Persian rug. When she looked up, only motes of dust swirled in the slanted afternoon light, but on the shelf where he stood, a single volume now protruded, the Ravenwood Legacy, a history, bound in cracked leather that felt disturbingly warm to the touch. That night, Clara drank 2 fingers of Grandma Imogen S. sherry and opened the book. The family tree diagram near the end stopped her cold. There, beneath her own name, another branch had been inked in fresh black ink. Clarissa Ann Turner, B. 1989 D. 1996. Her hands shook. She'd been hospitalized at 7 for what doctors called dissociative episodes, weeks-long gaps in memory. Her grandmother dismissed as overactive imagination, now staring at the impossible date. Clara realized the entries below the other Clarissa S. name told a different story. 1993. Incident at Loon Lake, 1995. Unfortunate Business with the Kittens, 1996. Necessary measures taken. The fireplace spat an ember onto the hearth. When Clara looked up, the man in gray stood reflected in the mantel mirror, his blurred face inches from her ear. "They made you forget," he whispered. "But the house remembers." She spun around. Empty room, but the sherry glass now held brackish water smelling of pond scum. And pressed into the liquid surface floated a single eyelash too long to be human. The photographs multiplied. They appeared in dresser drawers, between pages of her manuscript, once staring up from a bowl of tomato soup. Each showed the other Clara at different ages, always wearing colors. The real Clara had been forbidden scarlet, emerald, sunflower yellow, in the most recent Polaroid, taken from outside the house. Both Claras stood framed in her bedroom window. The other Clara's smile showed pointed teeth. On the 12th night, Clara woke to find her left arm covered in biro scribbles. Liar etched across her forearm. Murderer looping around her wrist. Her own handwriting. She didn't remember writing it. The walls started bleeding the next afternoon. Not blood, something thicker and iridescent that oozed between the floral wallpaper seams. When Clara touched it, the substance clung to her fingers like spider silk. That is when she found the door. It hadn't been there before. This narrow black door at the end of the second floor hallway. The knob turned with a sound like cracking knuckles. Beyond lay a staircase descending into absolute darkness. The air wafting up damp and metallic. Somewhere below, water dripped. Clara's legs moved without consent, carrying her down steps that shifted underfoot like cartilage. The basement was wrong. Ravenswood's blueprints showed a root cellar, but this space stretched cathedral vast, its vaulted ceiling lost in shadow. Rows of specimen, jars lined rough stone shelves. The liquid inside glowed faintly chartreuse, illuminating things Clara's mind skittered away from knotted filaments. Ocular clusters. A tiny hand with too many joints. At the room's center stood an ornate bathtub filled with black water. Floating in it, preserved like a specimen herself, was the other Clara. Her yellow dress billowed around a body bloated from decades underwater. The right side of her skull had collapsed inward. "You pushed me," the corpse whispered without moving its lips. Over a pretty rock. Clara's scream caught in her throat. She remembered now the glittering quartz at Loon Lake's edge. Her grandmother's voice. There can only be one air. The satisfying crack of twin meeting stone. They made her swallow something bitter afterward. And for years, Clara believed the empty space in her memories was just a story she told herself. The man in gray materialized beside the tub. His features finally clear. Grandma Imogen S. Lawyer, Mr. Yates, who D. handled the estate. Dead since 1998, according to his obituary. His mouth unhinged like a snake S when he spoke. The Ravenwood line requires balance, he hissed. Light and shadow, living end. He trailed a finger through the bath water, which began boiling violently. You didn't he really think you could leave her behind? Clara fled upstairs, but the house had other plans. Doorways led to impossible spaces, a ballroom filled with mannequins wearing her face, a greenhouse where fleshy orchids pulsed in time with her heartbeat. The Polaroids now papered every surface, each showing the other Clara closer to the camera, sharper-toothed, more corporeal. By the full moon, Clara couldn't distinguish the whispers from her own thoughts. She took to wearing sunglasses indoors to dull the way walls now breathed, their floral patterns squirming with insectile life. The manuscript for her novel had rewritten itself page after page of I am sorry, I am sorry, I am sorry, in looping cursive that matched the scars on her arms. The final photograph appeared in her mouth. She woke choking on chemical sludge. The Polaroid S white border caught between her molars. This time, the other Clara stood in the basement, dripping black water, her crushed skull gleaming wetly. Behind her, the bathtub overflowed with liquid darkness that crept up the stairs in the photo. Up the stairs Clara now heard creaking under actual weight. The bone-handled knife felt comforting in her hand. Clara barricaded herself in the pantry as something dripped down from the ceiling, thick, iridescent strands that stuck in her hair like gum. She could hear the other Clara humming their grandmother S. favorite lullaby in perfect harmony with the house S. groans. There S. room for both of us, crooned a voice that might have been her own. The pantry door bulged inward, wood splintering around 5 pale fingers pushing through. When the police came weeks later, summoned by a mail carrier who noticed uncollected letters, they found Ravenswood House locked and silent. Clara S. laptop sat open on the desk. Last document modified the previous night, a single sentence repeating until it dissolved into gibberish. We remaking such pretty stories now. The new estate agent remarks on the smell. Potential buyers keep complaining about dampness in the master bedroom, though inspections show no leaks. Sometimes, when showing the library, she glimpses 2 little girls in the garden from the corner of her eye, one in gray, one in yellow. But they read never there when she looks directly. The house closes escrow next Friday. The buyers, twin sisters, seem delighted by the clawfoot tub in the unexpectedly spacious basement. Story 9. The grandfather clock struck 13. As Evelyn Moore peeled the last strip of floral wallpaper from the nursery wall, the sound shouldn't he have surprised her any more it had been doing. That since she moved into her mother S. decaying Victorian, but her fingers still spasmed against the damp plaster. A triangle of brittle paper fluttered to the floorboards, revealing not the expected layer of horsehair insulation, but a single word gouged into the wall in frantic capital letters. "Run, not real," she whispered, breath fogging in the November chill. The mantra had become necessary since the funeral. "You forgot to take your pills this morning. This isn't happening." Her therapist called it complicated grief. The probate lawyer called the house a fixer-upper with character. Neither mentioned the way shadows pooled thicker here. How the second stair from the top creaked differently depending who stepped on it. How the air smelled of gardenias long after she ripped up every bush Evelyn knelt to examine the carving. Flecks of lead from a broken pencil still clung to the grooves. Her mother S. handwriting. The realization slithered down her spine. Mom had dementia for years before the fall down the stairs. The doctors said she forgot what stairs were. A wet crunch echoed from the master bedroom, above the sound of an apple being bitten in half. Except Evelyn hadn't bought apples, hadn't eaten fruit in weeks. Her stomach turned as sticky sweet juice dripped through the ceiling crack onto her forearm. The stairs groaned under her weight as she climbed, each riser warping like cartilage. She paused at the 13th step, the one that creaked for strangers, and heard her own voice whispering behind the bathroom door. Not her current voice, hoarse from disuse, but her 8-year-old self pleading. "Please, Don T, make me go in the closet again, Mama." Her palm met cold brass as she pushed the bedroom door open. The 4-poster bed stood neatly made, hospital corners intact from when the paramedics took Mom away. No apples, no juice, just dust motes swirling where the October sunlight pierced the boarded windows. Then she saw the closet. The mirrored door stood ajar, reflecting not the room behind her, but a long hallway papered in yellow chrysanthemums. At the far end, a child S. legs dangled patent leather shoes, white tights, a pink skirt darkened around the edges. Evelyn S. fingers went numb. She still had that skirt, folded in a memory box under her bed. The blood never fully came out. "You are not here," she told the reflection, backing toward the door. The scent of gardenias thickened. The doctor said stress hallucinations. "You are not." The closet slammed shut. When she pried it open with trembling fingers, only moth-eaten coats hung inside, but the mirror now showed her own face superimposed with her mother S. milky cataract eyes. and written in breath fog on the glass. Why did you lock me in here? 3 nights later. Evelyn crouched in the clawfoot tub with a flashlight, scrubbing at the bathroom tiles. The grout kept bleeding, no matter how hard she scraped. Thin red tendrils seeped between the cracks. The plumber had laughed when she asked about pipes leaking blood. Rust, he said. Old houses got secrets. Her hands shook as she unearthed another message beneath the layers of grime. This one, finger-painted in something brown and flaking. She S. lying to you. The letters matched the slope of her Mother S. handwriting from before the dementia. Back when she D. write love notes in Evelyn S. lunchbox. The flashlight flickered. Behind her, the medicine cabinet creaked open. Evelyn watched in the spotted mirror as amber prescription bottles multiplied like mushrooms Seroquel, lithium, thorazine, all with her name, all dated after Mom S. death. The labels blurred as she reached for them. Take your medicine. EVVIE scrawled across the mirror in Vaseline. Just like Mom used to write reminders. Stop it. She smashed the mirror with the flashlight. Glass rained into the sink as the lights died. In the sudden dark, something warm dripped onto her shoulder from above. The flashlight beam revealed a crimson droplet quivering on her skin. Then another. Then a steady patter as blood rained from the ceiling vent. She fled downstairs. But the living room walls were breathing, expanding and contracting like lung tissue. The grandfather clock chimed 13 again. Its pendulum, now a butcher knife, swinging in time with her pulse. Shadows congealed into the shape of a woman by the fireplace, facing the wall, hands moving in frantic circles. Mom. The word tasted like copper. Is that the figure turned? Empty eye sockets wept maggots. You promised you'd visit. It rasped with her Mother S. voice. You left me alone with them. Evelyn S. scream died as the lights surged back on. The walls stood still. No blood. No figure. Only the knife pendulum, glinting in the clock S. belly. The lockbox from under Mom S. bed smelled of gun oil and regret. Evelyn hadn't he opened it since finding it last week. Hadn't he wanted to know why her sweet, church-going mother needed a .38 revolver. Now she spun the combination etched into her memory, her birthday backwards, and found Polaroids. Instead of bullets, the first photo showed her 8-year-old self sleeping. Nightgown rucked up to her ribs. Mom S. Loopy script on the back. Night terrors again. Sleepwalked into closet. Must be more careful. The next. Evelyn at 12, strapped to the 4-poster with bedsheets. Tried to stab Mr. Whiskers. Docent T, remember. Then age 16, naked in the clawfoot tub, wrist slit. Found her just in time. God forgive me. Her breath came in shallow gasps. She didn't remember any of this. Didn't want to remember. The final Polaroid fluttered to the floor. Mom, standing in the nursery, pregnant belly glowing in blacklight. Behind her, the wallpaper peeled away to reveal hundreds of run carvings. The caption, "She's quiet today. The house likes her." Evelyn S. hands found her abdomen. The nightmares about scissors and umbilical cords. The appendicitis at 17 that left a jagged scar. The way Mom had smiled at her from the hospice bed, whispering, "They never let you leave now." A wet cough echoed from the nursery above. Not her cough. Not human. Something learning to mimic. Evelyn grabbed the revolver and crept upstairs. Each step sinking deeper into the wood, as if the house were swallowing her feet. The nursery walls pulsed, stripped of wallpaper. They oozed black fluid that formed words as it dripped. You should have stayed gone. The ceiling fan rotated on its own, each blade dangling a tiny noose. And in the corner, the rocking chair moved, though empty, creaking in time with the wet sounds from the closet. She aimed the revolver at the closet door. Whatever you are, you're not real. This is grief. This is the door burst open. The smell of rotting gardenias choked her. Inside hung Mom's favorite blue dress, bloated as if filled with water. It lurched forward, sleeves reaching. Evelyn fired. The dress collapsed, deflating with a child's whimper. But the nursery walls kept bleeding words. We were both lying to you. The attic hatch hadn't been opened in decades. Evelyn balanced on the trembling ladder, revolver clutched in one hand, the other pushing against the swollen wood. With a splintering crack, it gave way to suffocating heat, and the buzz of flies' moonlight through the grime-caked window revealed a nursery crib mobile, spinning, though the air stood still. Tiny handprints in dried blood covered the walls. In the center sat a wicker bassinet, its linen lining squirming with black beetles. She approached. The bassinet held a mummified infant, skin like parchment, eye sockets filled with copper pennies. Its tiny hands clutched a birth certificate. Evelyn Rose Moore, twin, Elizabeth Ann Moore, cause of death, suffocation. The floorboards behind her creaked, the 13th step groan. She turned. Mom stood whole and healthy, wearing the bloated blue dress. "I saved you," Mom said, smiling with too many teeth. The house wanted to, but I gave it her instead. Now it wants what's owed. The walls peeled away into a tunnel of chrysanthemum wallpaper, stretching into darkness. At the far end, 8-year-old Evelyn huddled in a closet, scratching run into the wall. Mom's hands clamped over her shoulders. "It's your turn to stay. the corpse crooned. So your sister can finally go. Evelyn S. scream merged with the House S. foundation-shaking roar. She fired the last bullet into Mom S. forehead. The body collapsed, but the attic nursery kept spinning. The bassinet S. beetles swarmed over her shoes, up her legs, pouring into her mouth as the infant S. corpse giggled. The walls closed in, chrysanthemums blooming from her pores. They found Evelyn S. car in the driveway 3 weeks later. Groceries rotting in the trunk. The house stood empty, but for the grandfather clock tolling 13. In the attic, police discovered a woman S. skeleton clutching a rusted revolver. Finger bones still wedged in the trigger guard. The coroner called it suicide, a self-inflicted gunshot wound from 20 years prior. Neighbors still report seeing a light in the nursery window on moonless nights. They swear they hear 2 voices singing lullabies, one sweet, one gurgling, and the endless scritch-scratch of a child S. nails carving the same word into every surface over and over as the house patiently waits for its third sister to come home. Story 10. The cicadas were screaming when Mara returned to Blackwater. She'd forgotten how their songs saturated the air. Hear not the rhythmic chirping of city crickets, but a shrill, panicked static that vibrated in the teeth. Her childhood home stood at the end of Hemlock Drive, its sagging porch choked by kudzu that seemed to pulse as she dragged her suitcase up the warped steps. The key still fit, though the lock fought her like a jaw clenching against intrusion. The house exhaled. Mara told herself it was just stale air escaping 20 years sealed since her mother S. sudden commitment to Willowbrook Asylum. 10 since the state-mandated funeral neither of them attended, but the breath carried the sweet-draught stench of the Blackwater lilies that gave the town its name, their fleshy petals blooming where the river slowed to a crawl behind the house. She could smell the damp in the wallpaper. Ancient paisley patterns, bleeding sepia, tears down to the baseboards. Her first night, Mara dreamed of teeth, not the neat rows from biology textbooks, but jagged things like broken porcelain, grinding in the dark. She woke choking on the taste of lake water, her sweat gone cold and slick as algae. The analog clock on her nightstand read 3:07 m. Its red numbers reflecting in the full-length mirror across the room. Her reflection sat up when she did. She froze, hand half raised to rub sleep from her eyes. The other Mara completed the motion, fingers dragging down a face that wasn't quite her own, the left eye slightly wider, the mouth twisted where hers lay slack. When Mara S. breath hitched, the reflection smiled with sharpened incisors. The scream died in her throat. As the bedside lamp flickered on, the mirror showed only Mara's own wide eyes now. The frantic rise and fall of her chest beneath a faded Smith's t-shirt. She counted the cracks in the ceiling until dawn painted the room in bruise-colored light. Each breath still tasting of stagnant water. You re-exhausted. She told the face in her compact mirror the next morning. The makeup, didn't he hide the purple crescents beneath her eyes? Jet lag, grief. This house, the townsfolk at Blackwater General Store confirmed the last part. Folks always said that place was hungry, said the cashier, ringing up Mara's instant coffee and Pop-Tarts with fingers stained nicotine yellow. Her name tag read LORNA. Your Mama's people built it back when the lake was still a baptism spot. Before the drownings started, Mara's fingers tightened on the sweating Slim Jim display. Drownings. Lorna's laugh came out a wheeze. Whole congregations, some nights. Preacher said the water turned unholy after they dragged the river for that missing girl back in '58. Found her stockings tied to a cypress knee 7 miles downstream. Neat as you please. Body never surfaced. The bell above the door jingled as an old man entered, cutting off whatever else she might have said. Lorna's smile went tight as a garrote. Welcome home, Miss Harlow. The crawlspace hatch groaned when Mara found it that afternoon, hidden beneath a threadbare rug in her mother's bedroom. The smell hit first wet earth and copper, and something sweetly fungal. Her phone flashlight revealed nests of cables cobwebbed across the joists, and between them, faces. Mara stumbled back, skull cracking against the doorframe. When she looked again, they resolved into Halloween masks dangling from fishing line. Their plastic features melted into grimaces by decades of heat. A clown, a witch, a lopsided tiger with one eye dangling from its socket. Beneath them sat a child tea set. The tiny cups filled with dark pellets that rolled like rat droppings when she nudged them with her shoe. The last mask lay separate on a moldering pillow. A girl's face, cheeks rouged with what might have been nail polish, lips sewn shut with black thread. Mara reached for it before she could think better. The plastic warm as living skin. Something skittered in the walls. She fled to the kitchen, where the lake glinted through grime-caked windows. The water looked still as a mirror from here, but she'd seen its true nature as a child. How the current curled just beneath the surface, like a sly hand waiting to grab ankles. Mama had warned her never to swim where the lilies grew thick. Their roots will tangle you up, she'd say, stirring powdered creamer into her instant coffee, keep you down where the catfish nest. the first letter arrived that night. Mara found it taped to the storm door, the paper damp, and speckled with flecks of algae. No stamp, no return address, just her name in shaky block letters. Don T. Let her see you sleep. She spent the evening boarding up the bedroom mirror with planks from the rotting tool shed. The cicada's scream rose to a fever pitch as she hammered, each blow sending vibrations up her arm that lingered like phantom touches. By midnight, she moved her bedding to the parlor couch and swallowed 2 Benadryl with a gulp of warm vodka. The dream came anyway. She 6 years old, standing on the dock where Daddy took his last photo before the boating accident. The water laps at her light-up sneakers. From below the surface, something matches the blinking pattern of her shoes red, red, red. Mama calls from the house, but her voice comes out garbled, drowned. When Mara turns, the figure in her mother's bedroom window has too many teeth and skin, like wet newspaper. It presses a finger to lips stitched with black thread. Mara woke to the taste of lake water and the sound of something dragging itself up the porch steps. The security chain held when she peered through the front door crack. Moonlight painted the planks in silvery streaks, illuminating wet footprints that shimmered with iridescent slime. They led from the lake to her doorstep, each print smaller than the last, until the final one beside the mat might have been made by a child's bare foot. Her phone displayed no service when she tried calling 911. The landline emitted a low, droning tone that buzzed in her molars. She spent the remaining hours before dawn huddled in the clawfoot tub, a steak knife clutched in her fist, watching the bathroom mirror through splayed fingers. By morning, the footprints had dissolved into patches of glistening mold. Mara drove to the county records office with the stitched-shut mask burning a hole in her tote bag. Harlow's owned that land since before the Civil War, said the archivist. A gaunt woman whose glasses magnified eyes the color of weak tea. She spread a 1923 survey map across the reading table, its edges brittle as autumn leaves. Says here the original house burned down in 1938. Arson. Mara traced the property line, quivering toward the lake. What happened to the family? Depends who you ask. The woman Nail tapped a newspaper, clipping glued to the map. Margin local girl. 9. Disappears during baptism service. Ellie Harlow went missing the night her daddy tried to cleanse the lake. They found her hair ribbon tied to the pulpit 6 weeks later. Church burned down not long after. The photocopied police report showed a familiar face beneath the missing header. Same stitched-shut mouth as the mask in her crawlspace. Same too wide left eye. Ellie Harlow looked exactly like Mara's reflection from the first night. The storm hit as she sped back toward Hemlock Drive. Rain fell in sheets, turning the road to a black mirror that reflected her headlights in smears of liquid mercury. Through the downpour, the house appeared as a hunched silhouette with glowing eyes, every window illuminated from within. Mara hadn't left any lights on. She found the back door swinging on its hinges. Water pooled on the kitchen tiles, warm and silty between her toes. The crawlspace hatch stood open, a low crooning seeping up from the darkness, a Child S off-key rendition of Jesus Loves Me. Mara descended the ladder with her phone flashlight clenched in her teeth. The beam shook across tea-set dolls made from dried lily roots, their faces studded with crawdad claws for eyes. Polaroids papered the walls, generations of Harlows, standing rigid by the lake, their eyes scratched out with rusty nails. In the center of the dirt floor, the stitched mouth mask floated in a galvanized tub filled with black water. The crooning stopped. Something cold and fibrous brushed her ankle. Mara S. Light caught the kudzu vines snaking through the hatch, now plump and glistening as veins. They coiled around her legs as the tub began to bubble, the mask rising slowly to reveal a face beneath a girl S. bloated features. Waterweed hair spreading across the surface like cracks in glass. "Yuri home," gurgled the thing wearing Ellie Harlow S. skin. Its stitches popped one by one, releasing fat black flies that buzzed against Mara S. cheeks. "We've been keeping your room." Mara woke on the dock. Storm clouds churned above, the lake heaving beneath her as dozens of pale shapes breached the surface, drowned faces with Mara S. eyes, Mara S. mouth, Mara S. birthmark blooming like a bruise on their left cheeks. They reached with hands that had never known sunlight, their fingers bending in too many joints. "One of us leaves," the Ellie thing whispered in her ear, its arms vine tight around her chest. "One of us stays. That is how the hungry places get fed." In the house behind them, every window blazed. Shadows moved behind the glass, a parade of Harlows pacing their gilded cage, their mouths open in silent screams. Mama stood in the attic, her hands pressed to the glass in a perfect mirror of Mara S. childhood wave goodbye. The first icy hand closed around her ankle when the Realtor S. sign went up 6 months later. The neighbors remarked how the new owners looked uncannily like that nice young Harlow woman. Such a shame she moved away so suddenly. The husband had her eyes, though, and the twin girls skipping rope on the porch, spitting image of their mother. At night, the lake whispers to them in Mara S. voice. The crawlspace hatch breathes, and in the master bedroom, the full-length mirror stays carefully covered, though sometimes when storms press close, and the cicadas fall silent. The cloth slips to reveal a face, pressed against the glass from the other side, mouthing words that leave frost blooming in the shape of a Child S handprint.